Welcome to Cinema and Suds. I'm Roger Cropley.
And I'm David Jester.
We're here to talk about films
and beer.
You're here on the podcast. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
My name is David Jester, and for lack of better terms, I guess you could call me an independent filmmaker. I've directed films. I've made films myself. I'm part of the Maine Film Association when it comes to engagement and trying to bring in new members. And I was also a firefighter paramedic for 23 years. So I kind of did that. And as I got into my career, I got more creative and decided to follow the film side. So I've done commercial work in Maine. I've also made a lot of short films that were just, some small documentaries. Mm-hmm. One is actually going to be shown on Maine Public Broadcast coming up soon. And that's a documentary about an artist in the state of Maine named William Irvine. And the film's called Behind the Canvas. And then I also did some 48-hour film festivals and 72-hour film festivals, which I feel like every filmmaker has done at one point in their career and life. And, and those are I find sometimes the most enjoyable because I don't want to say you're constrained, but, they set limits, right? You have to fit it within this. And it makes your mind try and find these creative ways of making a film within 3 days to fit 7 minutes, write the script, get everything. And it's the ingenuity of filmmakers. It's just the perfect storm of trying to make everything work at the same time. So I love those.
So that usually involves a prop and a specific line that you have to put in, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So usually it will be a specific line, a prop, and then a theme. So the last one I did was under the Maine Film Association, MFA, and I was so lucky because I got mockumentary. My team was the first team to be able to pull from the hat since we were the first ones to actually sign up that year. And we got mockumentary, and I was so excited because I love mockumentary. I wanted mockumentary going into that night. And as soon as I walked out of there, I had an idea instantly. I didn't have any previous notion of what I was going to write, but as soon as I got that, it was a flash in my mind, and I just began writing it on the way home. It was basically speaking into my phone, talk to text, and then recording, because it was it's so much fun. I mean, making a film is so much fun, and those, like I said, those contests really push you to your limits to force you to try your best way to fit it within these constraints, which is good, right? You don't always want to have free reign of something because you'll be going at it forever. It's so much fun. I can't say enough. I actually look back on those film challenges, and I feel like they were just really awesome. Everyone was there, everyone dug in deep, and they, you were up for 48 hours sometimes. You barely slept, but man, it's a lot of fun.
It's a good way to find crew members that you really want to work with, or actors that you enjoy working with.
Very much so. I actually found two people that I worked with on one called Wrong Lanes, and I think we won regional, and then we went to the East Coast, and we lost at the East Coast, but we won the local, we won the regional, and that film was a lot of fun. And we actually filmed it in a bowling alley in Brunswick. And yeah, two of the actors I later used on another film. So yeah, you just develop these connections throughout all these.
Now, you recently finished a short film. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I recently finished One for the Road, which is a Stephen King dollarbaby. And I was very fortunate to actually make this film because first I started it in COVID. So you have to send Stephen King under this program a request to make this film, and you send in a short proposal, and really you're sending it to Stephen King, but it's someone that works for him that does the work, right? I think her name is Margaret Morehouse, and she looks over the contract, sees what people are asking for, and this was really designed for student filmmakers and people that just want to use this as part of their portfolio. When you sign the contract, there's some constraints. You can't put it out for public viewing, you can't profit off it, but his generosity is really incredible. So I have a lot of friends that have requested that they can put them on, certain streaming networks and so on, and he's agreed to that. So as restrictive as the contract is, he's also very generous on the other side on using it creatively. So you give $1. That's the dollarbaby program. So you give $1 for the contract, you sign it, with the stipulations, and then you're able to use what the body of work that you chose, usually a short story, and you can make a film from it. So when I applied, it was like right at the end of the pandemic. It was around like 2021. And I asked for One for the Road, which is basically the sequel to Salem's Lot. It's after the actual story, and it's just people living on the edge of that, that wilderness, that frontier. And it takes place in the 80s. So if you think about it then too, it's not like we have social media and you could, post and say, oh, look, like another vampire, right? So the world doesn't know about it. Most people don't. You can hide those things. And a family comes upon, a family breaks down, and the husband goes and walks to find help, and it's during a blizzard, and he finds a local bar, and then everyone at the local bar is really hesitant to help him, and this guy's trying to figure out why, and it becomes this kind of to-do. So eventually they go to help the family, and lo and behold, the family has been turned into vampires, and then the husband gets turned into a vampire, and then the two that have helped him, Tukey and Booth, they end up escaping with their lives. But in his story, in Stephen King's story, it's being narrated to a hiker that comes into a bar one night, where I took that story, because you're allowed to adapt it in any way you want to. And I took that story and I actually made the vampires a little bit more crafty, made them into foes, because a lot of stories, vampires are just fiends, right? They're just looking for blood. They're just bloodthirsty. That's it, right? They're mindless at times. They're almost zombies in some movies. Like they can't think around things. So I wanted these vampires to actually have thought, to be manipulative. So instead, in my version, they set a trap. And the family, the Lumleys, their car actually breaks down because they run over construction debris that the vampires put in the road. And then Lumley leaves his family to go get help and goes to this bar. And again, Tukey and Booth are very reluctant to help him out. And I don't want to spoil the whole film, but yeah, so, it has a lot of differences. I changed a lot of things in it. I kept true to the original story, I feel, but it was really exciting to make a Stephen King film. It was a lot of fun to dive deep into it and to give it my own voice, right? I had a great crew, I had a great editor. It was really an awesome process, and it was just so phenomenal that I felt very fortunate. And we filmed it in the state of Maine, in Ellsworth. Actually, we filmed it in 3 locations. Brunswick, we did it in an apartment in Brunswick. We did it in Ellsworth, and then we did it in Mariahville at the Mariahville Grange. And the Grange was very kind and considerate to us. They allowed us to use their building. We filmed in the exterior. We filmed in a field next door to it. And it was just so helpful. The community came out and really supported us and really helped us when they didn't have to do that. And people were so engaged and so enthusiastic about it. It's so nice because you film these films on these local levels, and everyone is just so excited that they don't care, right? They just want to participate. I didn't even know they were going to. It's just people from the Grange showed up that night with food and with cookies, and they were sitting inside and talking to the extras. And it was just so cool because they were engaging them, and it was less boring for everyone. Everyone was in the Grange while we were filming outside, and it's so great to have that community involvement. So I find that in Maine a lot, is that when you film these small films, you film any film, right? Everyone's so excited about it, and they want to help out in any way they can.
I was on the crew for Blood and Money, which was actually originally named Allagash, which was shot in Bethel, so way far away from Allagash. But I found the same thing. There was a lot of local people who came, and they acted as drivers. They volunteered their, four-wheel drive pickup trucks to get through the snow or to help tramp down the snow so that the actors could get to the locations and all that kind of stuff. It was, it was wonderful.
Yeah, you don't find that everywhere.
Yeah. One question about Stephen King, the Dollar Babies. Does he want to see the scripts before you shoot them, or is he just totally hands off?
He's totally hands off. Once you have the contract, it's up to you on how you want to adapt it. It gave me a creative license to do what I wanted to do with it, to create my own world and to create my own story. And, at the same time, you're also putting Stephen King's name on it. So I don't want to say that gives you clout, but I think it does draw a little bit more attention than if it was just a standard film. Now, with that said, there is no more Dollar Baby program. So myself and a handful of other filmmakers were some of the last that actually got into the program and got our films done. Margaret, who has been running it, has retired. So there was no reason other than the fact that Margaret has retired. She has been holding that mantle for, I guess, it sounds like 50 years. Frank Darabont was actually a Stephen King dollarbaby maker. He made The Woman in the Room.
Wow.
And at one point, Stephen King said that that was the best version of that film that he had ever seen. And then he went on to make Shawshank, So, like, he used that body of work that he made and kind of showed Stephen King that he could do more and he could do something. And he eventually got the rights for that. So it's pretty cool. And, Darabont's made a few Stephen King films, actually. But, not that I think that would happen from One for the Road, but it's just really awesome to see what has come from that program. And Stephen King's the only person that knows how many dollar babies have ever been created or completed, right? Because a lot of people ask for the requests and they never actually finish their film. Follow through is huge in making a film, right? You can say you're going to do it, you can get all the funding in the world, but if you don't actually put that in the can and finish it, it's not a film. You do have to send in a DVD of the film. Years ago it was VHS, but you do have to send in a DVD of the film, and you do send it to the address, and supposedly he does have a whole collection of all these films. Whether or not he sits around at night and watches these, I highly doubt it, but I could be wrong. Like, he could be sitting there at night, like, being like, man, like, let's watch this film. You never know.
It's true. So you never heard anything back from him, about your version of his story?
No, you don't. And, I can imagine he's a very busy man and has a lot on his plate. And, I was just, like I said, felt so fortunate that I was able to do this, that I got approved to do it. And, and that people funded the film as well. Like, that was huge for me because we didn't just make this as a ragtag team. We actually had funding to make this film. So at the end of the day, I felt like we made something with a decent production quality.
Right. I think you probably answered this already, but what inspired you to write that particular script or use that particular story?
So I do love vampire stories, and I feel like vampires are these great characters that have lived within our folklore for so long. And as a kid, I was fascinated with vampires. I was fascinated with anything that was occult, vampires, ghoulish, Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, anything like that, right? And there'd be specials on TV when I was a kid in the 80s about vampires of the world. And it would go through all the different vampiric people that have existed in history. So one, the fact that it was, vampiric was really awesome. I love that idea. And then two, it's also the idea of isolation. So that is something that I love in films, like a film that's centered in a certain location where people are trapped in that environment. Kind of like Clue. It's one of my favorite films. Or The Thing. It's people talking in rooms. The environment around them traps them within that. And in the original story, Lumley gets trapped because it's a blizzard. He leaves his family to go get help. So then when he goes to the bar, the guys are essentially also, for lack of better terms, trapped in the bar. The plow guy comes by, last one of the night, he's going to do a swipe, they're going to go home, and then Lumley comes barging in, half frozen, as he was walking through a blizzard. So now it's there's no one to help them. It's a blizzard, it's, the phone's out, the plow guy already went by. For me, it's the environment. That natural disaster is also aiding in the suspense and the drama and the tension build up in that. And I love that. If you took The Thing and put it anywhere else at any time, it wouldn't be as suspenseful. It wouldn't be as terrifying because it would be okay, we could just walk away.
Right. Yeah. When you're on Antarctica, you're not just walking away.
Yeah.
True.
And then at the end, too, it's the guys survive. Let's just say both of them aren't the thing, right? Everyone has their own speculation on whether or not, a MacReady or a Childs are actually, the thing. But the reality of it is, it doesn't matter. They're going to die anyway. So the reality of it is that they save themselves, but also are dying either way. That isolation, that solitude, plays so much of a role for me as a character itself. And I love that. I absolutely love that.
So what was your writing process like? Do you develop the story first, or build the world around the characters.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't have to be about this particular film. Like, you probably have written some other things.
Yeah. You know what? I'll talk about this film about this because I think it was the perfect storm for mistakes, errors, and then also not following my own process at first. So when I started writing this, I just went, I always just write free flow and always have. In other words, I don't sit down and outline something. There's been few stories I've ever outlined. And I just write down very minimal details about characters that I have to remember throughout, because you might use those physical characters, those traits, those personalities. But outside of that, I just kind of write freely as it comes to me, as I see it in my mind. And when I was writing One for the Road, I wrote it the way I wanted to, but then I started listening to people and I started doubting my story and I started doubting what I wanted to put out there. And it's really hard to write from a perspective of someone else when you're not that person.
Right.
Now, it's very helpful to get critiques and criticism from people. It really is. And as a writer, when an editor comes back with edits, I always have to look at them, read them, put them down, and come back about 2 hours later and say, okay, I see what they're saying. Like, I get this. Because that's why they're an editor. They're there to sell that work. They're there to make it readable for the audience. So I get that. But there was a lot of, maybe this should do this. What if this is this? Like, what if this? And I started just like spinning and spiraling, right? And then I eventually reined myself back and I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, you don't do this. Like, you, as a writer, you just don't do this. You have people that you trust that you can use as muses. And I've always had friends that are really good muses of mine and help me with my writing. And I can sit there and bounce ideas off. We can be at a bar and I can tell them the story and they would be like, you know, it'd be really cool. Like, if the person could do this. And I'm like, damn, well, like, that's a really good idea. So those are people that I value in my writing. There are other people that want to see their story written and don't want to put the time and effort into writing their own story. So they want to critique and steer you in the wrong direction. And that happened to me a few times. And it's not malicious. It's not anything. It's just what people do. Some people do, right? Like, they're just, they're trying to be helpful. They want to see, they have a vision too. So I had to kind of rein myself back in and be like, no. Like, this is, so I went through and this is why I'm saying this. I went through 12 drafts. I never go through 12 drafts on a short film.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Oh my God. It was so many drafts. At the end of the day, I was just like, all right, like, I literally took drafts 1 through 6 and threw them out. Like, I threw them out. I deleted them. I went into final draft and I deleted all of them. I didn't even want to look at them. And I went back and I wrote what I have. And granted, I say I started at 6, I deleted 1 through 6, I started on 7, ended up with 12. But the thing is that 7 through 12 were tweaks. Like, if I change something, if I move a page, if I decide to take this scene and put it over here, I'm going to create a new version of that script just so I can keep a chronology and look at it. So really 7 through 12 were very small and minimal. And I did receive great advice from the executive producer, Jeff Whitehead. He's on the board of the George A. Romero Foundation. And he actually himself funded One for the Road. He gave a large contribution and he was executive producer of the film. And he was there for any time I needed advice. And he was always there for me. And one thing he suggested was, for film festivals, there's a sweet spot in time. And that sweet spot is usually 19 minutes when it comes to a short film. It's 7 minutes, 9 minutes, 15 minutes, and then 19 minutes, right? Those are kind of the marks for sweet spots. So for something that was going to be my length, he said to me on the phone, he's like, what do you think the sweet spot is? And I was like, 19 minutes. And his words to me were, exactly. So I came to you, right?
Right, yep.
I don't know if you guys out there know this, but Roger edited the film for me and he did a phenomenal job. And I was able to go to you and say, I want to hit this around 19 to 20 something minutes within reason, right? We have to still keep the story. And you were able to do that. You kept it within, I think we're at like 23 minutes and 42 seconds with
Right.
credits, right?
Right.
In title.
Correct.
So that, that, what Jeff said to me impacted my script uh, incredibly. And took that script that was at 40 pages, I cut it down to 21. And to be honest, I think it was the better film. I think the 40-minute film was, I would either take that 40 minutes and expand it to 100 pages,
Right.
and I would make a feature. Because at that point, it's like the audience either wants, a feature or a short film, and you're not giving them either. So that was my process on writing this film. Normally, like I said, with a script, if it's my idea, it comes, it's a flash in the pan. I comes to me, I just write it free flow and I let it ride as it comes. And I just know, basically I look at like a 3-act structure, make sure I'm kind of hitting those, like benchmarks. And then from there, just try and keep track. Try and keep track in my mind of like all the things that have happened. I jot down notes as I'm going along, thinking that might be important to come back to later. And then I'll just reread and reread and reread. It's kind of like editing a documentary, right? Or editing a film. It's like, my God, by the end of it, you have like every line memorized.
Exactly. Yes, indeed. So when you're free writing, are you writing on a computer, or are you actually just handwriting it and then translating it into on the computer?
It all depends. I really like handwriting, but like I hand wrote. I've been working on a script for a while that you've read, and yeah, I hand wrote the first 50 something pages of it because it came to me, and it's just, for lack of better terms, this is like ridiculous to say, but it's almost like spirit writing in the way that I just literally can free flow handwrite constantly. And that's the thing, is it just comes to me, and I just write and I write and I write and I write, and I can go forever if someone doesn't break me from doing it. So
Plus, it's a lot harder to go, cross something out because it's still there. It's not like on a computer where you have this temptation to be like, oh, I don't want to have that, so I'm going to go back and rewrite it, and then you just end up spending all the time rewriting things and not getting forward in your writing.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so
And dialogue is something, for me, dialogue is about getting out the context of what the person's saying in that moment. And you can go back later and add their regional dialect, add how the person speaks, add the personality. So I'll put that block of dialogue in there, which might sound so blocky and so terrible, right? But what I do is then I go back later in their voice and rewrite it. So at least I know that's the intention at the time.
now, how did you get in touch with the person that became the executive producer of your film and helped you fund it?
I mean, this is where friends, are really important in this business. And also, it's just commiseration. We all work together. We all help each other out. And my friend, Julia Marchese, who I worked with on I Know What You Need, which was a Stephen King dollarbaby that was filmed up in Orono. She was funded by Jeff Whitehead as well. And she had reached out to the George A. Romero Foundation about funding. And Jeff had, reached out to her and gave her funding for her film. The foundation is really great. I've met a few of them that work on the foundation now. Suzanne Romero, George Romero's daughter. Very, very nice, wonderful, beautiful person, just so kind. And it's funny because you meet people and you always hear these like horror stories about how pretentious some people can be in this industry, or how like just they're always out like for themselves and looking for something to kind of like screw you over. And with the people that I've met from this foundation, and everyone I've met along the way, have just been so phenomenal. They've just been so nice and so kind and so supportive. And it's just they don't ask anything of you, right? They just ask that you create and be creative. So because Julia had reached out to them, I had reached out to them and just asked them if they had any suggestions to help me out for whether it's fundraising or, just getting the word out that I'm making the film. And lo and behold, they all reached out to me, and Jeff reached out and said, hey, I'd love to fund your film. I read your script. I really like it. I can tell that you've been a writer before. And I think this script has a lot of good things in it. It has good meat to it. So let's talk. And we conversed quite a bit on the phone, and he gave his support in other ways too. It was anytime I needed to call him, anytime I had doubts, anytime I just needed, sometimes you just need that little bit of encouragement, right? Because you're entering into something that you think you know what you're doing, but you don't quite know what you're doing. And Jeff just was so kind that he gave that support. And that's, I think, what so many of us need, is they just need someone in your corner saying, yes, you can do this. And that's huge.
Yeah.
It really is, because there's so many things like mounted up against you. You don't know if it's going to go through, and everybody's looking at you, right? You're the director, and it's like, oh my God, like, is this going to succeed? And, I could call Jeff at any time and he would be like, hey, let's talk.
This is Cinema and Suds, so
Yes,
I assume you brought some beer.
I did. There's that for you. So we have Irish Envy, which is a white stout, and it comes from Airline Brewing Company. The reason why I chose this beer is it's a white stout. I love stouts. White stouts I find very interesting because they're not using the dark malty roast, but it still has that kind of like deep, complex flavor of a stout. And also, across from where we filmed in Ellsworth at Finn's is Airline Brewing Company's tasting room and restaurant. So I figured, why not go like regional to where we filmed?
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the first one, Irish Envy. It's a 5.8% beer, so it's not too high in alcohol content, but we'll get to the higher ones soon.
I've never had a white stout, so this will be an experiment.
Right?
It's got like almost like a honey kind of aftertaste.
Yeah. It's like honey and almost like a soft milk chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It literally tastes, you know what? It tastes like almost like a breakfast cereal. Like they inadvertently made a breakfast cereal. Right? Like so many beers out there now, they try and force something. They're like a pastry stout made with like this and this to taste like, a Hostess pie.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right? And this just tastes good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very nice. Well, I guess we should continue on with our interview.
Yeah, we'll see how interesting it gets after we have some of these.
Exactly. So directing is a very personal job, and sometimes it's a lonely job, despite the fact that you're always surrounded by a bunch of people, because it all rests on your shoulders. How did you handle the pressure? And is it really all about the prep, or is it about the vision?
How did I handle the pressure? Threw chairs a lot. No, I'm kidding. Well, I think it helps that I had a fast-paced, stressful job for more than half my life. I mean, once you're like elbow deep in somebody else's blood, like most doesn't phase you. So that helped with the stress a little bit. I used to work with a producer, and Rachel Atwood, and she does commercials in the state of Maine. And I loved working for Rachel, and she would always say to me, she's like, hey, listen, the biggest thing to remember is no one's dying. But the reality of it is, right, is like we're doing something that's fun, we're doing something that's great, and we're doing something that involves problem solving. And that's the thing, is you just have to like stop and take a step back and say, okay, how can we solve this problem? Which I'll bring up a little bit later. There were a lot of problems that we had to solve. Small short films with small budgets usually have these problems. You don't have you don't have a person handling the cars. You're handling the cars, right? So, yeah, I guess for me, the stress a lot of times is it's not stressful. It's up to me to make sure that my vision gets out there. And if I don't communicate that with people and I don't say that, that's on me. And hindsight being 2020, there were a lot of things that I missed and I didn't get and I didn't do that I should have done. And I learned from that. So now I know. What was the second part of the question?
I think that's the way with all films anyways. You can prep as much as you want before you go, and there's going to be something that comes up that changes the direction where you have to adapt to for some reason.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely.
But it was other part of that question was, is it really about the prep or is it about your vision?
Oh, Jesus.
What do you say is the most important?
I have to say, I think prep is the most important thing. Vision is great. Vision, again, I say comes down to communication, but you should have already communicated that with everyone. Sitting down with the DP and talking about the tone and how you want to film it and how you want to light it and that's all vision, right?
Mm-hmm.
And prepping it with storyboards and, having an artist work with you and go through each scene so that way you can give it to the DP and you can show them how we're going to angle the shot, what I'm thinking. And then, I feel like it's a collaboration. You're working with all of these people to make your vision. But that, I would say 90% of that happens in prep. Because if you do that, if you prep that, if you rehearse that, if you check that, lay it out for everyone, when you get on site, it's going to be a fine-tuned working machine that people are just going to go to work.
Right. And you're depending on people who are supposed to be experts in their field to be the expert in their field.
Yeah, exactly. I don't like to micromanage, and that's something that's like very big for me. And if there's something there's an adjustment that needs to happen, then that's when you say something. But no, it's a collaboration. It's a work together. And to go back to your question, I think prep is the most important thing because that's also where you can get your vision out, and that's where you should have everyone understand your vision. And granted, with the films I've done, they're tiny films in the grand scheme of things. So we don't have like multiple different departments, right? You're all working together and you're all just, like the whole crew and cast was living in one house in Ellsworth that I booked for them. But that's the thing is every day I'd come in and we had the dining room as the office and we'd all collaborate. We'd all talk about it. We'd all get together and look at the call sheet and like the scenes for the day and what we're going to do. And I don't know, it's just that prep work ahead of time really led to success on set.
Did you prep the actors as well? Did you do rehearsals like a table read kind of thing, or was that more, just on set?
We did a table read in Brunswick. So all the actors came up. We did a table read. I wouldn't say we rehearsed a lot on set. I mean, I would do a walkthrough. I would always engage with the actors. Something my friend Julia said to me because I asked her for advice. And she said the number one thing that she, for lack of better terms, regretted from I Know What You Need was not spending enough time with the actors. So she said to me, the biggest thing that she would say to me, she would impart that wisdom to me is make sure that I spend time with the actors, make sure that I give them direction, make sure that I let them know, right? Because they want to, give you that. And I was very lucky to have such phenomenal actors in that film that, again, I don't micromanage. So when I went up to them and I said to them, hey, in this scene, for instance, in the early scene with Marla and Richie, this is where Marla, basically like Richie is a vampire and Marla is not, right? Like her husband basically walked off into the lot and got turned, and now she's left behind. And she's despondent, she's depressed, right? And she just doesn't really want to go on. And Richie is at her door on Christmas Eve. And he's like, trying to call her and bait her there, but he doesn't need to. She goes to the door and she pulls him in. So I took those two actors and I said, hey, listen, Marla loves you, right? This is kind of like a toxic relationship, like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Like you guys are like so enamored, so in love with each other. And she's pissed that she went off to the lot. She's pissed that you walked out and you abandoned her, right? And I looked at Marla and I said, you hold all the cards because you have to invite him into the house. So how are you guys going to do that? Like, what's your reaction to him? I said, I'm not going to tell you how you're going to handle that, what your reaction is going to be. You decide yourselves, like how you want that moment. And they decided that when Marla opens the door, she smacks Richie across the face and then grabs him by his shirt and pulls him inside. That's their relationship. Their love is strong within their own like toxic relationship. And they chose that, the actors. I didn't tell them to do that. And I thought that was great. If I thought it was completely out of character for them, I would have, given a suggestion, but I let them roll with it. And that's, they took what I gave them as who I thought their characters were and they molded that. And it's so great to see that, right? Like I don't want to tell them how to act. They're not puppets. They're not marionettes. They're actors. So I want them to emote in the way that they want to.
Now we're on to my favorite part of of the whole movie making process, the editing process.
Nice.
Now, they say that the edit is the last rewrite of the film. One, do you think that's true? And how did you approach the edit?
I think it's very true. Actually, I think coming from a place where I had been, had been writing beforehand and had done that for years, for me, it's the edit is important because that's where it all comes together. Like that's where the story's really made, right? Prior to that, we're just capturing scenes. But the thing is that when you put them together, an edit can change because things can move around, right? You can take one scene and put it later on as a flashback. You can alter things. And that's where I feel the power of a good editor really is, because it's not just about saying to someone, hey, do this the way I'm telling you. The editor knows story. The editor knows how to create story. You can look at something and be like, you know what, like there should be a dissolve here. There should be a flashback. And I think that's really exciting part about editing, is that it also can give and change and alter the tone of the film. For me, the story develops in the edit. And, how I approached that was, I mean, you know, and you're aware, I basically said to you, I don't want to influence the way that you edit. It's your job. You're a professional, and that's what you do. And as you edited the film, I would come back with some suggestions on like, can we add this? Can we do this? But I gave you the idea of what I wanted for a story and what the story was, and I gave you the script, and from there it's
Right.
yeah.
I mean, in general, like for editorial, my first pass of edit is trying to be as faithful to the script as possible. And then just seeing what's going to make it better, whether that's maybe rearranging scenes or taking out scenes or shortening scenes. It's all, but you got to start with like the whole entire story.
Yeah.
Whether that makes it 40 minutes when actually you're going for 20, that's fine.
This is something that I think was like a really good pickup, because you go into making a film and you have an idea, right? And you have this blueprint, you have a guidebook, you've created this map inside your head, and you don't want to really deviate from it. And they say like, don't, like when you're filming it, don't, because you're going to regret that later. You came back with a really good suggestion, which was when Booth is giving the story about Salem's Lot, I had like the DP had gone out and gotten and filmed a bunch of B-roll of a town in the state of Maine. And it was going to lay over that, right? And it was going to show like the desolation of a town. It was basically going to be like VO of like Booth telling the story. And later on, you said to me, well, look at this version without it. Like you see Booth telling the story and the vacant stare that he has, and like how much more powerful that is. And yeah, like that was great. I mean, I wouldn't want it any other way now. So for me, it's one of those things where everyone that's part of this is part of the creative process. It's not just the director saying, this is my vision. Everyone should be creative, and everyone should be bringing their own creative element to the work that's being made. I think that's the most important thing, is letting people be creative. Let them be artists. Let the people on your crew actually do their job, and don't micromanage.
Trust is an important thing when you're doing art.
And that's why you bring in people and that's why, but also you have to give people chances. It's not just always people but you should feel something with people, right? Like when you meet them, when you interact with them, you should feel that spark, that like kindred spirit in another person, and say, yes, like I want to work with them.
Right.
And I think that's important, is you find your group of people, and, you keep bringing more and more people into that fold.
Like we wouldn't have met probably at all, except for I was flying to LA to work on a film.
Yeah.
And you were flying to LA to go work for an Adobe conference.
Yeah.
And you just happened to have the seat in the same row. And I saw you pull out your computer and start typing on your laptop. And I was like, hey, that looks like final draft. Are you writing a script? And so we started a conversation, and and then I ended up editing that film.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of market for short films at all?
There's a market for short films, but I mean, like, I wouldn't say there's like a huge market for short films. I think most of it's now like streaming, like HBO Max, like has some short films, like Netflix, right? But most of that stuff also is like made for those streaming services. Like, Hulu had like a great batch of short films that were like horror films for a while. But really with this, like there's no market for this. Like we had to sign the contract. You can't sell it. You can't do anything with it. But, it goes to film festivals, and that's where you hope that you get some awards, and you hope it gains traction. You hope people see it. It's funny. It's the success of the film has been interesting because like it got shown at the Salem Horror Film Festival down in, Salem, Massachusetts. And it was really well received by everyone there. But at like film festivals, it's had like maybe like a 30% success rate getting into film festivals right now. But then it's being shown in Vegas at the Stephen King convention this upcoming October.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's being like shown at these big things, but like the smaller film festivals, it doesn't have good success at. I don't know what the formula is. I don't know how to, and it could just be there's so many people applying to ones and not the others. But either way, I'm just here to make something and put it out there and hope that people like it.
And one of the things for getting your film in a film festival is to actually get noticed by someone who might help you finance another film, basically. Really, it's trying to increase your portfolio.
Yeah. A friend of mine who I've worked with before in the past, he's a really great filmmaker, Alex Lewis. He did a short film. It's actually phenomenal. And it went to Sundance.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was telling me that basically people told him, when you show up, you have 48 hours before that excitement like dies down. So you have to have like a pitch ready, the next project ready, and like what you're going to do, like all lined up. Because once that like 48 hours is over, like the hype is over. So it's kind of cool that like fast pace, like you gotta like get it in there and like boom, boom, boom. But there's hope, right? Like we just want to create. Like that's what most of us want to do. Most of us will probably try and go bankrupt to create, half the time. But the thing is that some of us want to just make a decent living doing it. So, you hope for that chance, right? That like someone will notice and be like, hey, like I'd like to give them a chance.
Yeah, if you can make a living doing it, then that's all that you can ask for. If you're really successful, then great for you. But most of us just want to be able to do what we love.
I mean, I'll be happy just making like B movies. I mean, like whatever, right?
Exactly, right?
As long as I can make like somewhat of a decent living.
When it comes to like fundraising, and it comes to making a film in Maine, I know you haven't made a feature film, but you've been involved with like the Maine Film Association and have probably followed all the incentive things that go by in the legislature and really never get passed. What do you think Maine should do to try to attract some bigger films, or to even try to bolster the people that work here, that are trying to make films here?
So Massachusetts has, tax breaks for films. And I get it. I'm one of these people too where I believe that everyone should pay their fair share in taxes. Like Hollywood's this big machine that's like making money off like people and yada, yada, yada. But the reality of it is, if you're any business, you're going to try and maximize your profit and save money, right? Like that's just economics 101. When I worked the feature film in Massachusetts, Money Game, that was made in Turner Falls in Greenfield, Massachusetts. And the amount of money we pumped into that community, we literally dropped $10,000 to $12,000 just at the local coffee shop over a month. I mean, every day they would like sell out of stuff because of us, right? We did this for a month, and this like small town local community just got all this money pumped in there. This is not just from the production, but it's from our pockets, right? Because we also want some little level of comfort while there. So we're, going to the restaurants, we're going to the bars after work. Like you have 30, 40, 50, 100 people in these communities now that wouldn't be there, that are living there for a month, and you're spending your money there.
Right.
So that's the unfortunate part with the state of Maine, is that the legislature has refused to look at, or at least they've looked at it, but they've refused to pass any kind of tax breaks for films. And I just think to myself, it's such a loss, because what are you losing? You're not losing anything, because the tax revenue isn't coming here to begin with. Because films aren't coming here because there's no tax incentive.
Right.
So you can sit there and say, oh, well, we're giving something to them for free, but you're not. Like, you're not giving them anything for free. You know, you don't have them here to begin with. So you're basically losing business by not having these tax breaks. And that's why everyone's filming in Massachusetts. That's why people are filming in Georgia. That's why people are filming in New Mexico. That's why people are filming in California. I say, you know, give up the ghost. Like, you know, pass the legislation, get some, get a tax break in the state, and see what happens.
We are on our last question, and we are on our last beer. What's our new beer?
Yeah, so this is the Acadian Strong Ale from Fogtown. And Fogtown is in Ellsworth. So again, going with beer from where we filmed, one for the road. And Fogtown is on a side street right off of like downtown Ellsworth. It's a really great brewery. I find that I really love their stouts. Like, they have really good stouts. They have one called Night Nurse, and then they have one called like Double Shift. I chose the Acadian Strong Ale. I love Belgian ales. I it's just something, like, I love the candied sugars they use in Belgian ales. This I would say has more like a raisin and kind of like fruit forward flavor to it. And it's strong. It's a 10.2%. So got a good 750 milliliter here in hand.
So it's a good thing it's our last question.
That's kind of why I left it to the end also. I didn't want to start off with this one. But yeah, no, it's a good one. It's
Oh, it does taste like raisin. It has a raisin aftertaste.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's definitely, it almost borders the line of a sour.
I will take that over like a lemony beer any day.
Yeah, same.
I'm not much of the person who likes those beers that end up tasting like, grapefruit or lemon.
No, I'm not. I like my beers to have body. I like them to taste like beer also.
Right.
That's like the big thing for me, is I can't stand like all the breweries now that make beer that don't taste like beer. Give me a good German beer any day of the week, because that's what it tastes like. Or a good Belgian beer, like a quad. And, I kind of gravitate towards the ones with high alcohol content, but it's because they have more of a malty profile.
Right.
So I like the ones that, I'm not a huge hoppy fan. I'm more of like a malt forward fan.
All right. So this is the last question.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a film that you love that is completely underrated and why you think it is underrated.
So I have this obsession with a film, and I make everyone watch it. And people just roll their eyes and they groan every time I do this. And I think it's because I grew up watching 80s films on TV that you were just kind of stuck watching, right? Like those cheesy, campy, like horror flicks that weren't even, I'm not talking about like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street. Those were good films, right? Or The People Under the Stairs by Wes Craven. I'm talking about films that like Killer Clowns from Outer Space, or like those kind of, or Piranha. I mean, listen, I'm not judging. Like, I love those films. I watch them all the time, like the creature flicks back when. But I don't know if you've ever seen the movie called Rubber.
No.
Yeah, so in 2010, this film Rubber was made, and it's basically about a tire. And when I say this, it's like the tire that you would have when you were a kid in like the playground, that like someone would, for some odd reason, like most playgrounds had errant tires lying around them in the 80s. And not with a rim, it would just be like the rubber, right? And this tire in the middle of the Southwest in a desert gains sentience, stands up on end, and starts rolling around the desert. And it has like psionic psychic powers and can like make people's heads explode like scanners.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no. I mean, like, it's legit. And this film, with like a $500,000 budget, was actually not that bad. To be honest, it's a film that I make people watch all the time. It was well done. Like, from a filming perspective, from like lighting, from camera, it was well done. Like, this person did a really good job. And then the acting in it was really good too. I mean, it's not going to like win an Oscar, but for a film about a tire that's rolling around the desert, blowing up people's minds, and then becomes obsessed with this one woman and keeps rolling around trying to like get to her. I mean, literally, it's a tire. You're following a tire the whole time.
So
it's
this tire is in love with this woman?
Uh-huh. And then there's a fourth wall break where the whole time the film is going on, there's also an audience on top of a hill watching with binoculars the film, critiquing the film as the film's going on.
Really?
Yeah, it's wild. It's really good. I highly suggest, because the thing is that if you go into making that film and treat it like it is, right? Like, I'm going to make a film that's campy and cheesy, but we're going to have fun with it. And we're going to treat it like that. And we're going to make it the most campy, cheesy film we can. It's going to be great because people are going to want that. If you go into it and you're like, I'm going to make this be the most dramatic, serious film in the world, but
it's a tire.
Yeah, it's a tire. People are going to be like, what the hell did I just watch? So just treat it as it is. Be honest.
All right. Well, considering that you're going to be the co-host of this podcast, I will give that movie a watch, and I will give you my opinion.
Good.
The next time we have an episode.
I wait to hear your opinion on that.
I'll give it a shot. So, I brought 3 films. You brought 3 films. All right, so I've had too many beers, apparently. So you brought 3 beers to share. What actually is your favorite beer?
I would have to say it's Sexy Chaos by Marshall Wharf, and it's their Russian Imperial Stout. It's phenomenal. I highly recommend that, like, any person that comes to Maine, any person that lives in Maine, takes a trip up to Belfast and goes to Marshall Wharf and drinks their beer.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being a guest. I know that you're actually going to be the co-host of this podcast, so
I think I'll be interviewing you next show. I have my list of questions for you. Don't worry.
But we hope to, have a bunch of people on and talk about independent filmmaking and talk about making films in Maine and talk about making films all over the country. I mean, and sharing their beer.
Yes, that is very important. And not just beer, but libations in general. Like, some people might like, cider.
Right.
Or some people might like seltzer. And, we'll just have to...
I'm a whiskey person.
I'm a whiskey person. Listen, if we have to drink whiskey on this podcast, it's going to go downhill real quick. Just saying.
That would be a problem. Indeed.
But if that's what someone wants to drink, we won't judge.
Yeah, absolutely.
We won't turn down a good whiskey.
You've been listening to Cinema and Suds with Roger Cropley and David Jester.